Imagine standing in the center of a federal courtroom, surrounded by the very people you once called brothers, while a judge looks down at you and describes your life as one giant, elaborate lie. For Jose Irizarry, this wasn't just a nightmare. It was the inevitable conclusion to a decade of betrayal that rocked the DEA to its core. He was their golden boy, the elite agent who spoke the language of the cartels and supposedly knew how to dismantle them from the inside. But while the government was cutting him checks to fight the drug war, the cartels were cutting him much larger checks to win it for them. This is the story of a man who didn't just cross the line, he erased it entirely, living a double life of luxury, yachts, and high-stakes money laundering, all while wearing a badge. And the most terrifying part, he claims he wasn't the only one. Before we dive into the web of lies that led to his 90-day countdown to prison, we have to look at how a decorated federal agent becomes the very monster he was sworn to hunt. Jose Irizarry didn't look like a criminal. In the early 2010s, he was the rising star of the DEA's Miami field office. He was charismatic, bilingual, and possessed an uncanny ability to navigate the complex world of international finance. To his superiors, he was the ultimate weapon against the Colombian money laundering networks that fueled the global cocaine trade. They trusted him with the keys to the kingdom, allowing him to set up undercover front companies and bank accounts designed to trap cartel members. But Jose realized something very quickly. The system was broken, and the oversight was almost non-existent. He saw millions of dollars flowing through these accounts and realized that if a few thousand went missing here and there, nobody would notice. Then a few thousand turned into hundreds of thousands. He wasn't just catching the bad guys anymore. He was becoming their primary service provider. This wasn't a small-time side hustle. Jose and his crew, a group he later dubbed Team America, turned the DEA's own investigative tools into a personal ATM. They would use their official positions to facilitate the movement of drug money across borders, charging a premium for the safety that a federal badge provides. Think about that for a second. The cartels weren't hiding from the DEA. They were hiring them for protection. While his colleagues were working long hours for a government salary, Jose was living a life that belonged in a Hollywood movie. We're talking about $300,000 luxury watches, custom-tailored suits, and international trips that had nothing to do with police work. He was hosting lavish parties in Cartagena, renting out entire yachts, and rubbing shoulders with the very kingpins he was supposed to be putting behind bars. He even used his government-issued credit card and travel perks to fund these excursions. The sheer audacity of it is what's most striking. He wasn't even trying to hide it that well, yet for years, he was untouchable. Why? Because he was still bringing in results. He would hand over just enough small-time arrests to keep the bosses happy, while the real players remained protected under his wing. But in the world of federal investigations, no one stays hidden forever. The cracks started to appear when the sheer volume of money he was moving began to trigger red flags that even his high-level clearances couldn't suppress. Internal investigators began to notice discrepancies in the undercover accounts. They saw patterns of behavior that didn't align with standard operating procedures. But every time they got close, Jose seemed to have an answer. He was a master of the game, using the bureaucracy of the DEA as a shield. He knew exactly how to phrase his reports to make a suspicious transaction look like a necessary risk for a larger bust. However, the one thing Jose couldn't control was the people he worked with. Greed has a way of making people talk, and as the circle of those involved in his schemes grew, so did the risk of a leak. The turning point came when a related investigation into a Colombian drug trafficker revealed a surprising connection. A federal agent was listed as a primary contact for money laundering logistics. Suddenly, the golden boy wasn't just a suspect, he was the target. The FBI and the Office of the Inspector General began a quiet, methodical takedown. They didn't move in right away. They watched him. They tracked his spending. They listened to his calls. And what they found was a level of corruption that went far deeper than a single rogue agent. When the hammer finally fell in 2020, the shockwaves were felt throughout the entire Department of Justice. Jose Irizarry was arrested and charged with 19 counts, including money laundering, bank fraud, and identity theft. The evidence was overwhelming. They had the bank records, the photos of the yachts, and the testimony of the very criminals he had been protecting. But it was during his confession that Jose delivered his most stinging blow. He didn't just admit to his crimes. He turned around and pointed the finger back at the DEA. He claimed that the culture of the agency was one of corruption, where agents would regularly skim money, take bribes, and use their positions for personal gain.
He famously stated that the drug war is a sham, a game that both sides are playing just to keep the money flowing. He argued that he was just a product of a broken system, a man who realized that since the war couldn't be won, he might as well get rich while losing it. This defense didn't sit well with the judge. During his sentencing, Jose was told that he had betrayed the trust of the American people and endangered the lives of every honest agent in the field. He was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. But as he prepared to turn himself in, the reality of his situation set in. He went from a man who had everything, the power, the money, the prestige, to a man with a number on his back. Those final 90 days before his self-surrender were a countdown to the end of his life as he knew it. He spent that time giving interviews, trying to frame his legacy not as a traitor, but as a whistleblower who was brave enough to expose the truth about the failed drug war. Whether you believe he's a truth teller or just a con man trying to save face, the impact of his betrayal is undeniable. He compromised hundreds of investigations, outed sensitive sources, and cost the government millions. More importantly, he shattered the reputation of an agency that is already struggling to maintain public trust. The story of Jose Irizarry is a cautionary tale about what happens when the line between the hunter and the hunted disappears. It's a reminder that power, when left unchecked, doesn't just corrupt, it destroys everything it touches. Today, Jose is serving his time, but the questions he raised about the DEA and the effectiveness of international drug enforcement still linger. Was he truly a lone wolf, or was he just the only one who got caught? As the dust settles on this scandal, one thing is clear. The war on drugs has many casualties, and sometimes the biggest ones are the people supposed to be winning it. If you found this dive into the dark side of federal law enforcement fascinating, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell for more stories of high-stakes betrayal and true crime. What do you think? Was Jose a product of his environment, or just a man blinded by greed? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.